The charity gala at the Meridian Hotel was exactly the kind of event Grace Navarro attended for other people's benefit and endured for her own. She was there because her friend Danny had organized the silent auction and had used the phrase, "I will never forgive you," with the specific frequency that meant she was serious. Grace was 25, 7 months pregnant, and had been using a wheelchair for 2 years. Since a spinal cord injury from a fall at a construction site where she'd been doing documentary photography. She had a good chair, a quick wit, and very little patience for rooms full of people competing to demonstrate generosity in public. She was also, at this particular moment, trying to photograph a Venetian glass sculpture on a display plinth that was positioned directly behind a standing crowd of formally dressed backs, none of whom moved when she said, "Excuse me," because the acoustics in the room were designed for piano music, not human voices. "If you angle left, there's a gap between the man in the navy jacket and the woman with the feathers," said a voice beside her. Calm. Unhurried. The voice of someone who had assessed the geometry of the room and arrived at the solution faster than most people would have noticed there was a problem. She looked up. He was 63, silver-haired, in a suit that cost more than her camera, which was saying something. He had the kind of face that had been handsome for so long it had simply settled into authority, not soft, not hard, just permanent. Like architecture. "I see the gap," she said. "I was hoping they'd move." "They won't," he said. "They're looking at the Ashworth piece and Ashworth always draws a crowd." He said it without contempt and without apology, just observation. Victor Hale. He didn't extend his hand, he looked at hers, which were occupied with the camera, and gave a small nod instead. Clean social arithmetic. Grace Navarro. She angled left. The gap was exactly as described. She got the shot. "Your press," he said. "I'm a photographer." "There's a difference." She checked the image on the display. "Good. I was contracted for the event documentation." He looked at the image over her shoulder, not invasively, just the way people look at things in proximity. "The light's better from the left side of the room. The crystal in the west chandelier is original 1920s. It gives a different quality than the modern ones." She looked at him. "You know the chandeliers?" "I own the building," he said, without particular emphasis. She blinked. Then she looked up at the chandelier, then at him. "The light is better from the left," she agreed. He walked with her to the left side of the room. Not behind her, not ahead, beside her, at a pace she hadn't asked him to match. She noticed this the way she noticed everything. Accurately, and then set it aside to think about later. She was photographing the auction centerpiece, a triptych by a painter she actually admired, when she felt the particular shift in her lower back that meant she'd been in the same position too long. It wasn't pain exactly, more a complex negotiation between her body and gravity that she had become expert at managing and which required periodic standing transfers, which in turn required finding a stable surface at the right height, which in rooms like this was always a small logistical problem she solved privately and without drawing attention. She looked around. Victor Hale was standing 12 feet away talking to someone in a red tie, but he was also, she noticed with some surprise, watching her in the peripheral way that meant he was paying attention without making it visible. When her eyes moved to find the nearest surface, his gaze followed the direction and he crossed the room without finishing his sentence. "There's a console table behind the east curtain," he said quietly. "Right height, stable. Do you need?" "I'll manage," she said. Standard response. Automatic. "I know you will," he said. "I'm asking if it would be easier with someone present." She looked at him. That was a different question than the one most people asked, which was usually a version of "can I help?" that meant "I am uncomfortable watching this and need to feel useful." This was something else. "It would be marginally easier," she said. He held the curtain. She made the transfer. Neither of them made it a moment. Later, at the end of the evening, he found her at the coat check. The photography contract, Is it one evening or ongoing? He said. One evening. I have a project. A restoration documentation. The hotel is undergoing a partial renovation and I want an architectural record, not a construction diary. If you're interested. He handed her a card. Physical card, not a phone. The kind of gesture that said he had been doing business for long enough that some things stayed analog. No obligation. Look at the project scope and decide. She took the card. I'll look at it. He nodded. He looked at her once more, the same clear, non-performing look she had been cataloging all evening, and then he put on his coat and left. In the car home, Danny said, Victor Hale talked to you for 40 minutes. He was useful, Grace said. He's worth about $4 billion and he talked to you for 40 minutes. He knows the chandeliers, Grace said. She looked at the card. She put it in the pocket closest to her. The project scope was, as he had said, unusual. Not construction documentation, genuine architectural record, the kind that required understanding a building rather than just measuring it. The Meridian was a 1921 building that Victor Hale had purchased at 38 and had been, as he put it in the brief, in a conversation with ever since. 3 floors were being restored to their original specifications. He wanted photographs that showed what the building was, not just what it looked like. Grace read the brief twice and then called the number on the card. It's a 4-month project, she said, when he answered. Yes. I'll be 9 months pregnant for 2 weeks of it and then I'll have a newborn for the rest. A pause. Not the kind that meant he was recalibrating whether to offer the job, the kind that meant he was thinking about logistics. Can you work remotely for the early postpartum weeks? I can have any physical access you need held until you're ready. She had expected either an awkward withdrawal or an awkward over-accommodation. This was neither. Probably 4 to 6 weeks remote, then I'd need access again. That works, he said. There are 3 floors of archival material, photographs, blueprints, correspondence, that would take 6 weeks to document properly. You could start there. You've already thought about this. I thought you might call, he said. Simple. Unembarrassed. She started the following Monday. The Meridian's archive room was on the 2nd floor, accessible, and smelled like a century of paper and good decisions. Victor's archivist, a meticulous woman named Helen who had clearly been doing this job since before Grace was born, showed her the organization system, which was excellent, and left her to it. Victor himself appeared on the 3rd day, not to check on her but because the archive was apparently where he came to think. He sat at the far table with a stack of correspondence and worked in silence for 2 hours while she photographed blueprints. At no point did he ask how she was getting on or whether she needed anything. She found this restful in a way she hadn't anticipated. On the 4th day she said, "Why the Meridian? You own 7 buildings in this city." 8, he said, without looking up. The Meridian was the first one I couldn't afford. A pause. I bought it anyway. It seemed important. You bought a building you couldn't afford. I had a specific theory about what it would become. He looked up then. I've been right about it for 25 years. That's a reasonable return on conviction. The 8th day, she miscalculated an angle. The kind of small momentum error that happened when you were photographing from a low position and the weight distribution was different than usual. The camera dipped, she caught it, but the movement sent her chair rolling back half a foot into the archive shelves, which made a significant sound and sent a box of correspondence to the floor. She swore under her breath. She leaned to collect the papers. Leave them, Victor said. He was already crossing the room. He gathered the papers without hurry, noted the dates on the folders, replaced them in order. He was methodical about it, not performatively careful, just accurate. Then he looked at her. Are you all right? Fine, she said. Embarrassing. There's nothing embarrassing about physics, he said. He was very close, closer than the professional distance of the past 8 days. She was aware of him in a way that she had been managing carefully and which had just, in the aftermath of the adrenaline of the dropped camera, become harder to manage. He smelled like cedar and something older, expensive without being loud. The pregnancy changes your center of gravity significantly. I should have secured those shelves before the project started. It's not your fault. It's my building, he said. My responsibility. He looked at her steadily. I'd like to have the third floor ramp adjusted as well. The gradient is technically compliant but it's steeper than optimal. She looked at him for a moment. You researched the standards. I researched what would make this building work well for you specifically, he said. Those aren't the same thing. She didn't say anything. He went back to his table. She went back to her camera. But something had changed in the room's temperature, and both of them knew it, and neither of them addressed it, which was its own kind of conversation. She was leaving on a Friday, week 3, the light going early, the baby pressing on her ribs in the specific way that meant it was time to stop, when Victor appeared at the archive room door with his coat already on. I'll walk you out, he said. I know the way. I know you do. He held the door. I want to walk you out. She looked at him. He was 63 years old and looked like a man who had stopped explaining himself sometime in his 40s and had simply become whatever he had decided to be. She found this either admirable or dangerous. Possibly both. Fine, she said. In the elevator, he said, do you have support? For the birth. She looked at the elevator doors. My mother is flying in. And after? I manage, she said. It came out flatter than she intended. I know you do. He said it the same way he'd said it in the archive, not as comfort, as fact. I'm asking what the actual arrangement looks like. She turned to look at him. Why? He met her eyes. Because I'm interested in your well-being, he said, and I've been trying to find the right way to say that without it sounding like something else, and I've decided there isn't one, so I'm saying it directly. The elevator opened. She wheeled out. He followed. My mother stays for 3 weeks, she said, at the lobby door. After that it's me and the baby and whatever I've figured out by then. That's not a plan, he said. It's my plan. He nodded. He held the door. I'll have the third floor ramp adjusted by Monday. She went out into the evening. She did not look back. She thought about the elevator for longer than was probably useful. The baby came on a Tuesday, 3 weeks before the due date, in a manner that was urgent enough to be frightening and then resolving enough to be, eventually, fine. Her name was Lily. She was 7 pounds and 4 ounces and had an expression of profound skepticism from the first hour that Grace recognized as her own and found, in a way she hadn't expected, deeply funny. Her mother, Elena, was there, had arrived 2 days before, as if she'd known, which she probably had. Elena Navarro was 61 and had raised Grace in a small house in Tucson with the particular competence of a woman who had done everything alone and considered this neither a tragedy nor an achievement, simply a condition. She held Lily with the ease of someone who had done it before and looked at Grace in the hospital bed with the face she always made when she was proud and didn't know how to say it. She has your mouth, Elena said. She has my skepticism, Grace said. Same thing. Elena settled Lily against her shoulder. You did well. Grace had not told her mother about Victor Hale. This was partly because there was nothing to tell, he was her employer and a man who had been kind to her in ways she was still categorizing, and partly because telling Elena anything about a man required a level of precision that Grace hadn't yet achieved. There was an arrangement of white peonies on the windowsill when she woke from her first post-birth sleep. No card. But they were from the same florist who did the Meridian lobby, which she knew because she had photographed those arrangements 3 times and the particular way the stems were cut was distinctive. She looked at them for a while. Lily was asleep. The room was quiet. She felt, very unexpectedly, that she was not as alone as she had been prepared to be. He called on day 4. She was home by then, navigating the new arithmetic of a baby and a wheelchair, which was solvable. She had researched it, adapted her apartment, bought equipment, but which in practice was still surprising in its daily specifics. "How is she?" he said. Loud, Grace said. "Precise about what she wants. Terrible negotiator." A pause that had warmth in it. "And you?" "I'm managing the logistics," she said. "The physical recovery it's more than I planned for." She hadn't meant to say that. It came out because she was tired and because he was the kind of person you said true things to, and she was still learning where that line was. "I'd like to send someone to help," he said. "Not a nurse. A practical assistant, the kind who understands space management and doesn't ask intrusive questions. I have someone in mind. Victor." "I'm not asking you to accept charity," he said. "I'm asking you to let me do something that would make me less concerned about you, which is frankly a selfish request." She was quiet. 2 weeks, he said. "After that you tell her to leave and she leaves, no explanation required." She looked at Lily, who was doing the small animal breathing of deep newborn sleep. She thought about what pride cost and what it was for. 2 weeks, she said. "Thank you," he said. The 2 words were simple and meant something. The assistant was named Petra. Mid-40s, former occupational therapist, the most pragmatic person Grace had ever met. She arrived Monday morning, assessed the apartment in 12 minutes, rearranged 2 pieces of furniture without asking, correctly, and made coffee before Grace had to request it. "Mr. Hale said you were independent," Petra said. "I am." "Good," Petra said. "Independent people are easier. They know what they need. They just need someone to do the parts that are currently undoable." She looked at Lily. "May I?" "Yes," Grace said. Petra held Lily with the same ease as Elena. Lily stared at her with the skeptical expression. Petra stared back, unbothered. "She'll be fine," Petra said. "I know," Grace said. "You will too," Petra said, in the tone of someone delivering a fact rather than reassurance. "For what it's worth." Grace looked at her daughter and then out the window at the city that had not changed and at her own reflection in the glass, which had changed considerably, and felt something she couldn't name that was somewhere between grief and relief and something new that didn't have a word yet. She named it, privately, Beginning. She came back to the Meridian 7 weeks after Lily was born, on a Thursday morning, with the archival photography completed and a set of questions about the 3rd-floor restoration that required being in the building to answer. The ramp gradient had been adjusted. She noticed immediately, the angle was different, the transition smoother. She stopped at the top and looked at it for a moment, then went inside. Victor was in the lobby, talking to his site architect. He looked up when she came in. Something happened in his face, a quality of attention that had nothing to do with the project, and then he finished his sentence to the architect and crossed the lobby. "You look well," he said. "I've slept 4 hours at a stretch twice in 7 weeks, she said. "That's apparently well." "It is, for this stage." He said it with the authority of someone who knew, which she filed away. "How is she?" "Opinionated. Growing faster than seems reasonable." "She's with Petra." He nodded. "Petra said she was doing well." "You two have been talking about my baby." "Petra reports to me," he said simply. "She also told me you fired her after 8 days instead of 2 weeks." "I didn't fire her. I adjusted the arrangement. She comes 3 mornings a week now," he said. "Because I asked her to. That's different from being managed." He looked at her. "You're right. It is." He meant it, not capitulation, genuine agreement. "Come up to the 3rd floor. The plasterwork is back and I'd like your eye on it before we proceed." The 3rd floor was extraordinary. The restoration team had uncovered original hand-painted panels beneath 4 layers of 20th-century paint, botanical illustrations in ochre and sage that ran the full length of the corridor. Grace photographed them for 2 hours, moving slowly, the light from the north windows exactly right. Victor sat on the floor with his back against the wall and read correspondence from a folder, not crowding her, simply present. At some point she stopped shooting and looked at him on the floor, this 63-year-old man worth $4 billion sitting on a dusty restoration floor in a $2,000 suit, and said, "You know, most CEOs don't sit on floors." "I've found that floors offer excellent perspective," he said, without looking up. She laughed. It surprised her, the fullness of it, how it came up without warning. He looked up at the sound, and the expression on his face was something she had not seen before, unguarded, warm, and completely undefended. "There she is," he said quietly. She stopped laughing. "What does that mean?" "You've been cautious with me," he said. "Since the beginning. I understand why. That laugh was the first thing you've given me without thinking about it first." She looked at him for a long moment. The corridor was quiet. Dust moved in the window light. "I'm careful," she said. "I have reasons to be careful." "I know," he said. "I'm not asking you not to be." He held her gaze. "I'm just noting it. The difference." She looked at her camera. She looked back at him. "Victor." "Yes." "Why are you interested in me?" She said it directly, the way she said things when she was tired enough that diplomacy fell away. "I'm 25. I have a 7-week-old baby. I use a wheelchair. I am not the obvious choice for whatever this is." He stood up. He brushed the dust from his suit in 2 clean movements. He came to stand a few feet from her, close enough to be deliberate, and looked at her with the quality of attention she had been cataloging since the gala. "You came back to a building where the ramp was wrong and made your shot anyway," he said. "You told me the project fee was too low and renegotiated without apology. You accepted help from Petra and then restructured the arrangement on your own terms, which is exactly right. You have a daughter 7 weeks old and you came back to work because the work matters to you, not because you had to." He paused. "I am 63 years old. I have been interested in a great many things in my life. I know what interest feels like and I know what this is." She was quiet for a long time. The dust moved. "I'm not going to be managed," she said finally. "I know," he said. "And the age difference is significant," he said. "I'm aware. I need to think." "Take whatever time you need," he said. He went back to his folder, sat back down on the floor, and resumed reading. As if the conversation had been ordinary. As if he had said what he meant and was prepared to wait for the rest of it. She photographed the botanical panels for another hour. He read his correspondence. The light moved across the floor the way light in old buildings moved. Slowly, like it remembered the space. When she left, she said, "Thursday next week." He looked up. "I'll be here." She went down in the elevator. The ramp gradient was still perfectly adjusted. She noticed it again and thought, this is what it looks like when someone pays attention to you in the right direction. Not performing care. Actually caring about the specific practical reality of your specific life. It was, she thought, more disarming than almost anything else he could have done. They were cautious with each other and both of them knew it and neither of them rushed it, which was its own kind of intimacy. He came to her apartment on a Saturday in Lily's 9th week, not invited exactly, but she had mentioned that the light in her kitchen in the morning was the best light she'd found in the city for infant portraits and he had said he would like to see them, and this had been the implicit arrangement. He arrived with coffee from the place 3 blocks from the Meridian that she had mentioned once and which she recognized as unnecessary and deliberate in equal measure. Lily looked at him with her standard skeptical expression. He looked back at her with the same quality of calm assessment he gave everything, and then held out one finger for her to grip, which she did, with the complete and indiscriminate trust of the very new. "She has your eyes," he said. "Everyone says she has my something," Grace said. "I'm starting to think she just looks like herself." "She does," he said. "I meant your eyes are both the same color. I wasn't making a metaphor." Grace looked at him. "You're very literal." "I find it reduces misunderstanding," he said. He stayed for 3 hours. He held Lily while Grace ate breakfast properly for the first time in a week, both hands, hot food, seated at an actual table. He did not make it a gesture. He simply held the baby and let Grace eat, which was so ordinary and so rare at this stage that she had to look out the window for a moment to compose herself. The Saturday after that, and the one after that. A pattern without being named, he appeared, she let him in, Lily tolerated his presence with increasing warmth, and the three of them occupied the apartment with the specific ease of people who had independently decided that this was where they wanted to be. In the 5th week of Saturdays, Lily was asleep in her room and Grace and Victor were in the kitchen and she said, very quietly, "I don't know what I'm doing." "With Lily?" "You're doing extraordinarily well." "With this?" She gestured between them. "With, whatever we're deciding." He set down his coffee. He looked at her across the kitchen, which was small enough that across it wasn't very far. "I know what I'm deciding," he said. "Tell me." "I want to be in your life," he said. "In whatever capacity you decide is right. I am not going to pressure you toward anything and I am not going to disappear if you need more time. But I would like you to know that what I feel is not tentative." He said it the way he said everything that mattered, flatly, without performance, like a structural fact. "It hasn't been tentative since the archive room." She looked at him for a long time. Outside, the city did its Saturday sounds. From Lily's room came the particular quality of silence that meant deep sleep. "The father," she said. "You should know. You don't have to. I want to." She folded her hands on the table. "He was someone I was with for 2 years. When I was injured, he stayed for 8 months and then he didn't. Not cruelty, he just couldn't hold the weight of it. I don't think he was a bad person. I think he was someone who had never needed to be more than he was." She paused. "I found out I was pregnant 4 months after he left. I didn't tell him. That's my choice and I'm at peace with it." Victor was quiet for a moment. "How do you feel about it now?" "Relieved, mostly." She looked at her hands. "He would have stayed again, out of obligation." "That's worse." "Yes," Victor said. "Simply. It is." She looked at him. "You've been through something like that." "My marriage ended 12 years ago," he said. "She stayed too long out of obligation and I mistook it for love. By the time I understood the difference, we'd wasted 4 years of both our lives trying to hold something that had already gone." A pause. "I learned to recognize the difference between someone who is present because they want to be and someone who is present because leaving is harder than staying." "Which am I?" she said. "You're the first kind," he said. "If you weren't, you would have been easier from the start." She stood, braced on the counter, the brief transfer to standing that she could manage for short periods, and looked at him at eye level for the first time in weeks. He didn't react. He simply looked at her. She kissed him. It was deliberate and unhurried, the kind of kiss that was a decision rather than a momentum. He kissed her back the same way, present, certain, without rushing what came next. When she pulled back, she said, "I meant what I said. I'm not going to be managed." "I know," he said. His hand was at her jaw, careful and warm. "I'm not interested in managing you. I'm interested in you. There's a difference." "I know," he said again. And the way he said it meant, "I have thought about exactly this difference and I choose it." Lily woke up 40 minutes later with the specific urgency of hunger, and Grace went to her and Victor made more coffee, and the apartment rearranged itself around 3 people instead of 2 with the ease of something that had been preparing to do so for a while. Later, when Lily was fed and drowsing on Grace's shoulder, Victor sat beside them on the couch and looked at them both with an expression she hadn't seen on him before, something quieter and more unguarded than his usual composure. She recognized it after a moment as the face of a man who had expected less than this and was adjusting to the surprise of more. "What?" she said. "Nothing," he said. "I'm just here. That's all." She leaned her head back. Lily breathed. The afternoon light came through the kitchen window and lit the floor in long slow shapes. That was all. It was enough. The conversation about her injury happened in October, 4 months into whatever they had decided they were. Not because he pushed it, he didn't, but because Grace's quarterly neurology appointment had been followed by a result she hadn't expected, and she came to the Meridian that Thursday with the particular quality of silence that meant something had shifted. He waited until Helen had left the archive room. "Tell me," he said. She set her camera down. "My neurologist has been tracking some residual motor function below the injury. T6 incomplete. I've always had some sensation, some partial function. It's been stable." She paused. "There's a trial. Epidural stimulation combined with a specific rehab protocol. It's been producing partial recovery in incomplete injuries like mine, not full recovery, not a cure, but meaningful functional improvement in about 60% of participants." Victor was very still. "It's expensive," she said. "The trial covers some of it. The supplementary rehabilitation is not covered. It's also intensive, 18 months, 3 sessions a week, specific equipment at home." She looked at her hands. "I haven't decided anything. I'm telling you because," she stopped. "Because," he said quietly. "Because it matters to my life and you're in my life and I wanted you to know before I decided." She looked at him. "I'm not asking you for anything." "I know," he said. He stood up. He came to sit on the edge of the table near her, not hovering, just close. "What does your neurologist recommend?" "She thinks I'm a strong candidate. The injury profile is right. The timing postpartum is actually favorable, the body is already in a kind of reconstruction mode. What do you want?" She looked at the window. "I want to be able to lift Lily out of her cot without a transfer aid," she said. It came out smaller than she intended. That's the thing I want. Not walking. Not some version of before. Just that." He was quiet for a long time. She watched him think, the same way he thought about buildings. She had come to understand, with patience, from the structure outward, not rushing to the surface detail. "I want to fund the supplementary rehabilitation," he said. "No. Grace. No." She said it cleanly. "I know what you're going to say. You're going to say it's practical, it's within your means, it doesn't change anything between us. And you'd be right on all 3 counts. But I cannot be someone whose medical treatment is funded by a man she's in a relationship with. I cannot carry that weight." He looked at her. "Why not?" "Because if it doesn't work, or if it does and things change between us, I need to have done this myself. I need to know it was mine. That's about independence." "It's about survival," she said. "Independence is a luxury. This is about what I need to be able to live with." He was quiet. She watched him accept it. Not grudgingly, but with the particular quality of a person who understood the difference between what they wanted to do and what they had been asked to do, and who chose correctly. "What can I do?" he said. "Within whatever you'll allow." She had thought about this. The home equipment. Not as a gift, as a loan against the project fee. "I'm billing below market rate on the Meridian work and we both know it. Adjust the contract to fair market value and the difference covers the equipment." He looked at her for a long moment. "You've calculated this. I calculated this 2 weeks ago, she said. I was waiting to see if you'd offer something I couldn't accept first. And I did. And you did. She held his gaze. The contract adjustment I can accept. It's mine. I earned it. He nodded slowly. I'll have the contract revised by Monday. Thank you. He reached out and took her hand, not urgently, just the way he held things he valued, carefully, with full attention. I want you to be able to lift her, he said quietly. Whatever that takes. I want it for you. She turned her hand over and held his. I know, she said. That's why I told you. The revised contract arrived Monday. The rate adjustment was exactly as she had calculated, not $1 more, not $1 less. She appreciated the precision of this more than she would have appreciated generosity. It meant he had understood exactly what she had said. She enrolled in the trial on Wednesday. The first session was brutal and exhausting, and afterward she sat in the clinic parking lot for 10 minutes before she could manage the drive home. She texted Victor 2 words, first done. He replied, I'll have dinner at yours at 7 if that's acceptable. She typed back, yes. He made dinner. Something involving the contents of her refrigerator assembled with more skill than she had expected from a man with a personal chef. Lily sat in her bouncer and observed the proceedings with scientific interest. He ate at her table and did the washing up and left at 9 when she was falling asleep in her chair, and none of it was performed. She thought, going to sleep, this is what it is to be known by someone. It was, she decided, worth every complication it would cost. The rehabilitation was not a story with a single turning point. It was a long, slow, granular process of sessions and setbacks and incremental measurements, and days when progress was invisible and days when something shifted so slightly that she was the only person in the world who could feel it. Victor did not ask for progress reports. He asked how she was. Those were different questions, and she appreciated him knowing the difference. He was present in the ways she allowed him to be. At her apartment on Saturdays, at the Meridian on project days, at the occasional dinner where Petra watched Lily and they went somewhere that had thought about its access design. He did not move in. She did not ask him to. The shape of what they were had an honesty in it, 2 people who had both survived enough to be careful, being careful in a way that looked from the outside like slowness and felt from the inside like precision. Lily grew. This was the constant miracle underlying all of it, the way a human being went from the skeptical, bewildered newborn in the hospital to a person with preferences and sounds and a specific obsession with Victor's watch, which she would grab and examine with the concentration of a tiny horologist. She's going to be an engineer, Victor said once, rescuing the watch. She's going to be whatever she decides, Grace said. Yes, he said. I meant it as a compliment to her intelligence. I know. I'm practicing what I'll say when people try to project onto her. He looked at her. Fair. In the 13th month of the trial, Grace's neurologist showed her the latest motor function assessment. The numbers were, for an incomplete T6, remarkable. Not recovered, that word didn't apply. But genuinely improved in the specific ways she had wanted. She called Victor from the clinic parking lot. Tell me, he said, immediately, which meant he had been waiting. She said the results are in the top 15% of trial participants, Grace said. Her voice was steady. Her hands were not. The hip flexors have measurable voluntary activation. The core stabilization is significantly improved. And, she stopped. And, he said, quietly. I lifted Lily out of her cot this morning, she said. Without the transfer aid. Both hands, standing transfer, 7 seconds. Her voice cracked slightly on the number. 7 seconds. He was quiet. She could hear him breathing. Victor. I'm here, he said. I'm just, a pause. I'm very glad, he said. Simple. Completely insufficient and exactly right. I wanted you to know, she said. You're the only person I wanted to call first. Another pause. I'll be at yours at 6, he said. I'll bring champagne, or whatever you prefer. Or just dinner. Or I'll just come and we don't have to market at all, whatever you want. Champagne, she said. And dinner. And you. 6 o'clock, he said. He arrived at 5:50 with champagne and groceries, and Lily greeted him at the door in the way she had started doing, pulling herself up on the door frame and holding out her arms, which Victor bore with a gravity appropriate to the gesture. Grace watched him take her daughter and thought about all the ways a person could show up in someone's life and how most of them were insufficient and how this particular one was not. Later, Lily asleep, champagne poured, the city going quiet outside, he said, 7 seconds. 7 seconds, she confirmed. He looked at her with the unguarded warmth she had come to know, the expression that lived underneath the composed authority, the one that came out in her kitchen on Saturdays and in the archive corridor in the morning light. You did that, he said. All of it. You adjusted the contract. You told me how, he said. That's not me. That's you knowing what you needed and asking for exactly that and nothing more. He took her hand. I'm in awe of you. I have been since the archive room. She looked at him for a long moment. I love you, she said. She had thought about when to say it for several months and had decided that the right moment was when it was most accurate, which was now. I've been trying to find the right time to say it. There's no right time, he said. There's just when it's true. When was it true for you? The day you told me how to adjust the contract, he said. The precision of it. The dignity. He looked at her. I love you. I have for a while. She moved toward him and he held her, carefully and completely, and Lily slept in the next room, and the champagne went slightly warm, and none of that mattered at all. The project finished in the spring. The full architectural record, 68,000 photographs, 3 months of archival documentation. She delivered the final files on a Thursday. He looked at the index for a long time. This is the best documentation of this building that has ever existed, he said. It's a good building, she said. It deserved the work. So did you, he said. Deserve the work. She looked at him. Are you giving me another project? I have 4 more buildings, he said. I'd like an architectural record for each of them. That's 2 years of work. Yes, he said. Is that acceptable? She considered. I'd need to renegotiate the rate again. Naturally, he said. And I want creative control on the documentation approach. I assumed. And Lily comes with me on site visits. I've already briefed the site teams, he said. She looked at him. You briefed them before I agreed. I was optimistic, he said. She smiled. He smiled back. Outside, the spring light on the Meridian's limestone facade was doing what spring light on old buildings did, making everything look like it had always been there and always would be. Lily turned 1 in June, on a Sunday, in the garden of Victor's house, the one she had seen for the first time 3 months ago and which she had assessed with the accuracy she brought to all spaces, doors wide enough, hallways navigable, the garden level and stone-paved. He had watched her assessment without comment and then said, I had it modified 2 years ago when I bought it. The previous owner's mother used a power chair. 2 years ago, she said. That's before you met me. It's before I met you, he said. I consider that a coincidence that became convenient. The party was small. Elena, who had come from Tucson and who had met Victor 3 months ago and assessed him in 12 minutes with the same efficiency she brought to everything, and declared him, to Grace, serious, which is the only thing that matters. Danny and her husband. Petra, who had become something between an employee and a friend, and who held Lily for most of the afternoon while Lily ate cake with the focused commitment of someone discovering a passion. Victor stood beside Grace in the garden and watched Lily dismantle a small frosted cupcake, and she watched him watching her daughter, and she thought about the particular shape of what they had built. Not quickly, not conventionally, but with a kind of structural integrity that she recognized from the buildings he loved. The Meridian had stood for 100 years because someone had built it right. Not every building lasted. The ones that did were the ones that had been made with attention. In the evening, after the guests had gone and Lily was asleep upstairs and Elena was reading in the library. She had accepted the guest room with the equanimity of a woman who approved of what she saw and didn't need to discuss it. Grace and Victor sat in the garden in the late light with wine. "I want to talk about the future," he said. She looked at him. "What part of it?" "The part where we decide what we are." He said it directly, which was always how he said things that mattered. "I'm not asking you to make a decision tonight. I'm asking what you want. Concretely." She thought about it. She was good at knowing what she wanted, she had had to be, since the injury had required her to be precise about what was necessary versus what was habitual. "I want to work," she said. "The 4 buildings. More after that, if they're the right projects. I want Lily to grow up around people who treat her as her own person and not as a narrative." "Agreed," he said. "I want to continue the rehabilitation. The trial ends in 5 months, but my neurologist thinks independent maintenance work can extend the gains." "I know," he said. "I've been reading the literature." Of course he had. The home stimulation protocol is well documented. Petra can support the scheduling. She looked at him. "And what do you want?" He was quiet for a moment. Not hesitating, choosing. "I want to wake up in the same house as you," he said. "I want to be someone Lily trusts. Not her father, I'm not her father, and I don't intend to obscure that fact. But someone she can rely on. I want to build things with you, buildings, work, whatever comes next." He looked at his wine. "I want the ordinary things," he said, more quietly. "I've had the exceptional things. The extraordinary company, the landmark deals, the rooms full of important people. I want the ordinary things with you specifically." She looked at him for a long moment. "You're not afraid of the age difference anymore." "I was never afraid of it," he said. "I was concerned about whether it was fair to you. I'm less concerned now." "Why?" "Because I've watched you for 17 months, he said, "and you don't do anything out of obligation. If you're here, it's because you've decided to be. That's the only fairness that matters." She reached across and took his hand. He turned it over and held hers, the way he always held things he valued. She had learned to read him in this, the quality of his attention was a language, and she was now fluent in it. "Ask me," she said. He looked at her. "Move in with me," he said. "Take the time you need to decide." "But that's what I'm asking." "Yes," she said. She had decided 3 months ago, when she had stood in his garden for the first time and found the stones level and the doors wide and everything built, quietly, in the right direction. She had been waiting for him to ask. Elena, in the morning, at breakfast, said, "You're moving in with him." It wasn't a question. Grace looked at her coffee. "I am." "Good," Elena said. She poured more coffee. "He looked at you last night the way your father looked at me before I'd decided to trust him." She paused. "It took me too long to trust your father. Don't make the same mistake." Grace looked at her mother. Elena was 61 and had done everything alone and was the reason Grace knew how to do the same. "I didn't make you make that mistake," she said. "No," Elena said. "But you inherited the instinct." She set down the coffee pot. "The instinct is useful. Until it isn't." Grace thought about the archive room, and the ramp that had been adjusted before she'd said yes, and the contract revised to exactly the right number, and the way he sat on the floor of old buildings to understand their perspective. She thought about 7 seconds and a transfer lift and the weight of her daughter in both hands. "I know," she said. I'm past it. Elena looked at her for a long moment. Then she smiled, the full version, the one she saved for when she meant it. Good, she said again. The move took 3 weeks, not because there was so much to move, but because integrating a life was different from moving furniture, and Grace was particular about how her space worked, and Victor had the particular quality of a man who had lived alone long enough to have strong opinions about silence, and they had to find out where those things were compatible and where they needed to negotiate. They found out mostly by doing it. There was a disagreement about the study. She wanted the north-facing room, which got better photographic light. He had been using it as his reading room for 4 years. He gave her the north room. She found him a reading chair in the library with a window onto the garden that was better than the one in the study had been. He looked at it and said, "You planned that." "I measured the light in every room before I agreed to move in," she said. "Of course you did," he said, and sat in the chair, and the matter was settled. Lily adjusted immediately, which was either because she was adaptable or because she had already decided that Victor was a fixed point and had been waiting for the geography to catch up. She pulled herself along the garden wall with increasing confidence and pointed at birds with the authority of someone who was developing opinions about the natural world and expected them to be taken seriously. Victor took them seriously. He had sourced a field guide. The kind with large illustrations, designed for children, which he read to her at bedtime with the same gravity he brought to financial correspondence. A wren, he told her, on a Tuesday evening, holding the book open to the relevant page. Lily examined the illustration with forensic attention. Small. Brown. Disproportionately loud. "That's her," Grace said, from the doorway. "The wren?" Victor said. "Disproportionately loud," Grace said. Lily looked at her mother and produced a sound that was, in fact, disproportionate to her size. Victor looked at Grace. Grace looked at Lily. All three of them stayed in this configuration for a moment, the particular domestic tableau of 2 adults and a small human being who had decided to be amused, and something in it felt settled in the way that good structures feel settled, not because they haven't moved, but because they've found their load-bearing truth. In September, at the end of the trial, Grace's neurologist presented the final assessment. The gains had held. In some measures they had extended. The specific function she had wanted, bilateral standing transfer, both hands, sustained, was consistent and improving. She told Victor that evening, in the kitchen, the same kitchen where Elena had told her not to repeat her mistake. He was making tea. He had learned her tea, which was a specific variety from a shop near the Meridian that she had mentioned once and which had appeared in the kitchen 2 weeks later without comment. He set the cup down and turned and looked at her, and she told him the numbers, and he listened with his full attention, and when she finished he crossed the kitchen and held her in the careful and complete way that she had come to understand as his version of saying everything at once. 18 months, she said, into his shoulder. 18 months, he said. I couldn't have done the equipment without the contract adjustment. You did it, he said. The contract was yours. The work was yours. The decision was yours. He pulled back to look at her. I was just present. Being present is not nothing, she said. No, he agreed. It's not. He looked at her with the expression she had catalogued since the archive room and which she now understood completely. The look that meant, you are the most interesting thing in my field of view and I am not going to stop paying attention. I want to talk about the next trial, she said. There's a follow-on study. The results from this cohort have been good enough that they're expanding. Tell me what you need, he said. I need to think out loud with someone who will tell me what they actually think rather than what they think I want to hear. Then talk, he said. He handed her the tea. He leaned against the counter. He looked at her with complete attention. I'm listening. She talked. He listened and occasionally asked the kind of question that meant he was actually tracking the logic rather than waiting for his turn. Outside, the garden went dark. Lily slept. The house settled into its evening sounds, the particular acoustic of a space that was being lived in correctly, as Victor would say. Attending to the structure. Going back to source. At the end, he said, enroll. You think so? The data supports it and you want it, he said. Those two things in alignment are the clearest signal there is. She looked at him across the kitchen. He was 64 now, had been 64 for 3 weeks, the birthday marked by a dinner that was the first thing she had planned entirely for someone else and which had been, she thought, excellent. He looked the same as the night in the hotel lobby, composed, direct, the silver at his temples arranged as if deliberately. She knew now what was underneath it. The boy who had watched his father's firm fail, who had built everything he owned out of the fear of repeating it, who had met her in a building he had loved for 25 years and had quietly adjusted the ramp before she arrived. I know why I love you, she said. It came out unprompted, the way it did when something was simply true. He looked at her. Why? Because you go back to source, she said. You don't operate on summaries. You don't assume. She turned her teacup. You looked up the ramp gradient before I even said yes. Not to impress me. Just because it was the accurate thing to do. He was quiet for a moment. You noticed. I notice everything, she said. I know, he said. It's one of the things he stopped. Started again. It's one of the things I love about you. They were quiet. The kitchen was warm. Outside, autumn was making its first suggestions in the garden, the tree at the far end beginning its slow change, the light going at a different angle than summer. Same time tomorrow, he said. It was the thing he said when a conversation had done what it needed to do, not a question about logistics, a question about permanence. Are we still here? Are we still doing this? Same time tomorrow, she said. And meant, yes. All of it. Still. Later she would try to identify the moment she stopped managing her life and started living it. She couldn't find the moment. It had happened like the rehabilitation, incrementally, in the space between one small gain and the next, until one day the thing you had been working toward was simply what you were. She was a photographer who worked in old buildings and understood their bones. She was a mother to a child who looked at wrens with forensic interest and had her mother's eyes and her own face. She was in a house with level garden stones and wide doors and a man who had adjusted the ramp before she arrived, and who read field guides with full gravity, and who went back to source instead of trusting summaries, and who said same time tomorrow as a way of saying the only thing that mattered. She was, she thought, taking her daughter from her cot in the morning, both hands, standing transfer, no aid, exactly where she had decided to be. It was, as it turned out, more than enough.